There is another description of Mother Yashoda in a devotee's prayer. Let me begin. Let me given protection by Mother Yashoda, whose curly hairs are bound with thread, whose hair is very tight, very beautifully, very brightly, beautifully. Sorry, whose hair is very brightly beautified by vermilion placed in the part, and whose bodily frame derides all her ornaments. Her eyes are always engaged in seeing the face of Krishna, and thus they are always filled with tears. Her complexion, which resembles the bluish lotus flower, is enhanced in beauty by her dressing herself with many colorful garments. Let her merciful glance fall on all of us, so that we may be protected from the clutches of Maya and smoothly progress in devotional service. There is the following description of Mother Yashoda's affection for Krishna. After rising early in the morning, Mother Yashoda first of all offered her breast milk to Krishna, and then she began to chant various mantras for his protection. Then she would decorate his forehead very nicely and bind his hands, his arms with protective talismans. By all these activities, it is definitely understood that she is the emblem of all material affection for Krishna. The description of Nanda Maharaj's bodily feature is as follows: the hairs on his body, the hairs on his head are generally black, but some of them are grey. His garments are of greenish color, like the new grown leaves of a banyan tree. His belly is fatty. His complexion is exactly like the full moon, and he has a beautiful mustache. When Krishna was a baby, one day he was walking in a courtyard, capturing the finger of his father, and because he could not walk steadily, he appeared to be almost falling. While Nanda Maharaj was giving protection to his transcendental son in this way, all of a sudden there were drops of tears in his eyes, and he became overwhelmed with joy. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of King Nanda.
Childhood age, childhood dress, movements by the child, sweet words spoken by the child, nice spelling, and various forms of childish play are considered provocations for increasing parental love for Krishna. The childhood ages of Krishna are divided into three periods: the beginning of Kumar age, the middle of Kumar age, and the end of the Kumar age. During the beginning and the middle of the Kumar age, Krishna's thighs are fatty and the inner part of his eyes are whitish. There are signs of teeth coming, and he is very mild and gentle. He is described as follows: when Krishna had only three or four teeth coming out of his gums, his thighs were fatty, his body was very, very short, and he began to enhance the parental love of Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda with the activities of his childish body. He was sometimes stepping with his legs again and again, sometimes crying, sometimes smiling, sometimes sucking his thumb, and sometimes lying down flat. These are some these are some of the different activities of the child Krishna. When Krishna was lying down flat, sometimes sucking the toes of his feet, sometimes throwing his leg upward, sometimes crying and sometimes smiling. Mother Yashoda, seeing her son in such pastimes, did not show any sign of restricting him, but rather began to watch her child with eagerness, enjoying these childhood pastimes. In the beginning of Krishna's Kumar age, the nails of tigers were set in a golden necklace about his neck. There was a protective tilaka on his forehead, black mascara around his eyes, and silk thread around his waist. These are the descriptions of Krishna's dress at the beginning of the Kumar age. When Nanda Maharaj saw the beauty of child Krishna with tiger nails on his chest, a complexion like a new grown tamal tree, beautifully decorated with tilaka, made with cow's urine, arms decorated of nice silk thread, and silk cloths tied around his waist. When Nanda Maharaj saw his child like this, he never became satisfied by the child's beauty. In the middle Kumar, Mataji, you can read. There was a call. I'll just attend the call.
Okay. When Nanda Maharaj saw the beauty of child Krishna, the tiger nails on his chest, a complexion like the new grown tamal tree, beautifully decorated tilak made with cow's urine, arm decorations of nice silk thread, and silk clothes tied around his waist. When Nanda Maharaj saw his child like this, he never became satiated by the child's beauty. In the middle Komar age, the upper portion of Krishna's hair falls around his eyes. Similarly, he is covered with cloth around the lower part of his body, and sometimes he is completely naked. Sometimes he tries to walk, taking step by step, and sometimes he talks very sweetly in broken language. These are some of the symptoms of his middle Komar age. He is thus described when Mother Yashoda once saw him in his middle Komar age. His scattered hairs were touching his eyebrows, his eyes were restless, but he could not express his feelings with proper words. Still, when he was talking, his talk was so nice and sweet to hear. When Mother Yashoda looked at his little ears and saw him naked, trying to run very quickly with his little legs, she was merged into the ocean of nectar. Krishna's ornaments at this age are a pearl hanging from the septum of his nose, butter on his lotus-like palms, and some small bells hanging from his waist. It is stated that when Mother Yashoda saw that the child was moving, ringing the bells on his waist, smiling at her with a pearl between his nostrils and with a butter on his hands, she became wonderfully pleased to see her little child in that fashion. When the child in the middle of his Komar age, his waist became thinner, his chest became broader, and his head was decorated with curly hairs resembling the falling of the wings of a crow. These wonderful features of Krishna's body never failed to astonish Mother Yashoda. At the end of his Komar age, Krishna carried a small stick in his hand. His clothing was a little longer and he had a knot around his waist, resembling the hood of a snake. In that dress, he used to take care of the calves near the house, and sometimes he played with cowherd boys of about same age. He had a slender flute and a buffalo horn bugle, and sometimes he played on a flute made from the leaves of trees. These are some of the symptoms of the end of Krishna's Kaumar age. When Krishna was a little grown up and was taking care of small calves, he would often go near the forest. And when he was a little bit late returning home, Nanda Maharaj would immediately get up on the Chandrashalik, Chandra Chandrashalika, a small shed built on the roof for getting a bird's ivy all around. Wow. And he would watch for him. Worrying about the late arrival for his little son, Nanda Maharaj would remain on the Chandrashalika until he could indicate to his wife that Krishna, surrounded by his little cowherd friends, was coming back with the calves. Nanda Maharaj would point out the peacock feather on his child's head and would inform his beloved wife how the child was pleasing his eyes.
Mother Yashoda then addressed Nanda Maharaj. See, my dear son, whose eyes are white and who has a turban on his head, a wrapped on a wrapper on his body, and leg bells and that tinkle very sweetly on his feet. He is coming near along with his Surbhi cows, and just see how he is wandering upon the sacred land of Vrindavan. Similarly, Maharaj Nand would address his wife, my dear Yashoda, just look at your offspring Krishna. See his blackish bodily luster, his eyes tinged with red color, his broad chest, and his nice golden necklace. How wonderful he looks, and how he is increasing my transcendental bliss more and more. When Krishna, the beloved son of Nanda Maharaj, steps into his Kishore age, although he becomes more beautiful, his parents still consider him to be in the Paugand age, even though he was in between the ages of 10 and 15. When Krishna was in his Paugand age, some of his servants also accept him as being in the Kishore age. When Krishna performs his childish pastimes, his general practice is to break the milk yogurt pots, throw the yogurt in the courtyard, and steal the cream from the milk. Sometimes he breaks the churning rod, and sometimes he throws butter on the fire. In this way, he increases the transcendental pleasure of Mother Yashoda. In this connection, Mother Yashoda once told Mukhara, her servant, just look at Krishna's steel. Stealthily toward all sides and slowly stepping forward from the bushes. It appears that he is coming just to steal the butter. Don't expose yourself, or he may understand that we are looking toward him. I want to enjoy the sight of his eyebrows moving in his cunning way. I want to see his fearful eyes and beautiful face. In enjoying Krishna's attitude of stealing butter very stealthily, Mother Yashoda experienced the ecstasy of maternal love by spelling his head, sometimes patting his body with her hand, sometimes offering blessings, sometimes ordering him, sometimes gazing him, sometimes maintaining him, and sometimes giving him good instructions not to become a thief. Such activities are in maternal aesthetic love. An important point to be observed in this connection is that the childish propensity of stealing is there even in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore this propensity is not artificial. However, in the spiritual relationship, there is no in inability to this stealing propensity, and as there is in the material world.
In Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto 13th chapter verse 33, Shukadeva Goswami tells King Parikshit, my dear king, as soon as the elderly gopis saw their sons coming, there was an inexpressible sign of parental love, and all of them became absorbed in affection. At first, they were planning to chastise their sons for stealing butter, but as soon as the sons came before their eyes, they lost all of their angry attitudes and became overwhelmed with affection. They began to embrace their sons and smell their heads. While doing this, they became almost mad after their child. In their childhood pastimes, all these coward boys joined with Krishna in stealing water. But rather than become angry, Mother Yashoda became wet from the milk flowing out of her breast. Out of her affection for Krishna, she began to smell his head repeatedly. The general activities of all the mothers of cowherd boys were to kiss them, to embrace them, to call them by their names, and sometimes to chastise them mildly for their stealing habits. These manifestations of parental love are called sattvic ecstasy, wherein the manifestations of the eight kinds of ecstatic symptoms are visible in full. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto 13th chapter verse 22, Shukadeva Goswami tells King Parikshit, all the mothers of cowherd boys were illusioned by the covering influence of Yogamaya potency of the personality of Godhead, and as soon as they heard the flute playing of their boys, they immediately stood up and mentally embraced their sons who had been created by the direct internal potency of Krishna. Accepting them as their born sons, they lifted them into their arms and they began to embrace them, resting the children's body upon their own. The emotions created by this incident were sweeter than nectar turned into a palatable intoxicant, and the milk flowing out of their breast was immediately drunk up by their children.
In the Lalit Madhava compiled by Sri Rupa Goswami, Krishna is addressed as follows: my dear Krishna, when you are engaged in herding the animals, the dust caused by the hooves of the calves and the cows covers your nice face and artistic tilak, and you appear very dusty. But when you return home, the milk flowing out of the breast of your mother washes your face of its dust covering, and you appear to be purified by this milk, just as the deity is washed during the performances of the Abhishek ceremony. It is the custom of in the temples of deities that if there have been some impure activity, the deity has to be washed with milk. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and he was washed by the milk from the breast of Mother Yashoda, which purified him from the dust covering. Sometimes there are examples of Mother Yashoda becoming stunned in ecstasy. This was exhibited when she saw her son lifting Govardhan hill. When Krishna was standing raising the hill, Mother Yashoda hesitated to embrace him and became stunned. The dangerous position that Krishna had accepted by lifting the hill brought tears to her eyes. When her eyes filled with tears, she could not see Krishna anymore, and because her throat was choked up by anxiety, she could not even instruct Krishna as to what he should do in that position. This is the symptom of becoming stunned in ecstatic love. Mother Yashoda sometimes enjoyed transcendental ecstasy and happiness when her child was saved from a dangerous situation. such as being attacked by Putna or some other demon. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 17th chapter, verse 19, Shukdev Goswami says that Mother Yashoda felt very fortunate when she got back her lost child. She immediately placed him. She immediately placed him on her lap and began to embrace him again and again. While she was thus embracing her son repeatedly, torrents of tears fell from her eyes, and she was unable to express her transcendental joy. It is stated in the Vigada Madhava of Srila Rupa Goswami, my dear Krishna, the touch of your mother is so pleasing and cooling that it surpasses the cooling capacity of the pulp of sandalwood and brings and of bright sunshine bright moonshine mixed with the pulp of Ushira root. Ushira is a kind of root which is soaked in water, has a very high, very cooling. Ushira is a kind of root which, when soaked with water, has a very cooling effect. It is specially used in the scorching of heat of the sun.
The passionate love of Mother Yashoda for Krishna steadily increases, and her love and ecstasy are sometimes described as intense affection and sometimes as overwhelming attachment. An example of attachment for Krishna with overwhelming affection is given in Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto 6th chapter, verse 43, where Shukadeva Goswami addresses Maharaj Parikshit in this way: My dear king, when magnanimous Nanda Maharaj returned from Mathura, he began to smell the head of his son, and he was merged in the ecstasy of parental love. A similar statement is there in connection with Mother Yashoda when she was too anxious to hear the sound of Krishna's flute, expecting him back home from the pasturing ground. Because she thought that it was getting very late, her anxiety to hear the sound of Krishna's flute became doubled and milk began to flow from her breast. In that condition, she was sometimes going within the house, sometimes coming out of the house. She was constantly looking to see if Govind was coming back along the road. When many when many were when many were great sages, they were offering their prayers to Krishna, glorifying his activities. The queen of Gokul, Mother Yashoda, entered the battlefield of Kurukshetra, wetting the lower part of her sari with milk flowing from her breast. The entrance of Mother Yashoda at Kurukshetra was not during the battle of were not during the battle of Kurukshetra. At other times, Krishna went to Kurukshetra from his parental home Dwaraka during the solar eclipse. And at these times, the residents of Vrindavan also went to see him there. When Krishna arrived at Kurukshetra on pilgrimage, all the people assembled there began to say that Krishna, the son of Devaki, had arrived. At that time, Devaki, just like an affectionate mother, began to pat Krishna's face. And again, when people cried that Krishna, the son of Vasudev, had come, both King Nanda and Mother Yashoda became overwhelmed with affection and expressed their great pleasure. When Mother Yashoda, the queen of Gokul, was going to see her son at Kurukshetra, one of her friends addressed her thus: My dear queen, the milk flowing out of your breast mountain has already whitened the river Ganga. Oh, and the tears from your eyes mixed with black mascara has already blackened the color of Yamuna. And as you were standing just between the two rivers, I think that there is no need for your anxiety uh, to see your son's face. Your parental affection has already been exhibited by him to him by these two rivers. Baapre. The same friend of Mother Yashoda addressed Krishna as follows: My dear Mukunda, if Mother Yashoda, the queen of Gokul, is forced to stand on fire but is allowed to see your lotus face, then this fire will appear to her like the Himalaya mountains full of ice. In the same way, if she is allowed to stay in the ocean of nectar but is not allowed to see the face of your grace, then even this ocean of nectar will appear to her as an ocean of arsenic poison. Baapre. Let the anxiety of Mother Yashoda of Raja, always expecting to see the lotus feet of Krishna, face of Krishna, be glorified all over the universe. A similar statement was given by Kunti Devi to Akrura. My dear brother Akrura, my nephew Mukunda is long absent from us. Will you kindly tell me that his aunt Kunti is sitting among the enemy and would like to know when she will be able to see his lotus face again?
In Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 46th chapter, verse 28, there is a statement: when Uddhava was present at Vrindavan and was narrating the activities of Krishna in Dwarka, Mother Yashoda, while hearing this narration, began to pour milk from her breast and shed tears from her eyes. Another incident demonstrating Yashoda's extreme love for Krishna occurred when Krishna went to Mathura, the kingdom of Kamsa. In separation from Krishna, Mother Yashoda was looking at Krishna's makeup utensils, and she fell down on the ground. She fell down on the ground, almost unconscious, with a great sound. When she was rolling over the over when she was rolling over on the ground, there were many scratches on her body, and in this piteous condition, she began to cry, "Oh, my dear son!" And she slapped her breast with her two hands. With her two hands, this activity of Mother Yashoda is explained by the expert devotee as aesthetic love and separation. Sometimes there are many other symptoms such as great anxiety, lamentation, frustration, being stunned, humility, restlessness, madness, and illusion. As far as Mother Yashoda's anxieties are concerned, when Krishna was out of the house in the pasturing ground, a devotee once told her, Yashoda, I think your movement have been slackened. I think that you are full of anxieties. Your two eyes appear to be without any movement, and I feel in your breathing a kind of warmth, which is bringing which is bringing your breast milk to the boiling point. All these conditions prove that out of separation from your son, you have a severe headache. Headache. These are some of the symptoms of Mother Yashoda's anxiety for Krishna. When Akrura was present in Vrindavan and was narrating the activities of Krishna in Dwarka, Mother Yashoda was informed that Krishna had married so many queens and was busy there in his household affairs. Hearing this, Mother Yashoda lamented how unfortunate she was that she could not get her son married just after he passed his Kishore age, and that she therefore could not receive both her son and daughter-in-law at her home. She exclaimed, "My dear Akrura, you are simply throwing thunderbolts on my head." These are the signs of lamentation on the part of Mother Yashoda in separation from Krishna. Similarly, Mother Yashoda felt frustration when she thought, although I have millions of cows, the milk of these cows could not satisfy Krishna. Therefore, let a curse be on this milk. That and I also and I also am condemned because although I am so opulent in material prosperity, now I am unable to smell the head of my child and feed him with my breast milk as I used to do when he was there in Vrindavan. This is a sign of frustration on the part of Mother Yashoda and separation from Krishna. One friend of Krishna, one friend of Krishna's addressed him thus: "My dear lotus-eyed one, when you are when you were living in Gokula, you were always bearing a stick in your hand. That stick is now lying idle in the house of Mother Yashoda, and whenever she sees it, she becomes motionless, just like the stick. This is a sign of becoming stunned in separation from Krishna. In this separation from Krishna, Mother Yashoda became so humble that she prayed to the Creator of the universe, O Lord Brahma, with Lord. Creator of the universe, Lord Brahma, with tears in her eyes. My dear Creator, won't you kindly bring my dear son Krishna back to me so that I can see him at least for a moment? Sometimes in restlessness, like a mad woman, Mother Yashoda used to excuse Nand Maharaj. What are you doing in this palace, you shameless man? why, do, why do people call you the king of Raja? It is very astonishing that while being separated from your dear son Krishna, you are still living within Vrindavan as a hard-hearted father. Krishna.
Someone informed Krishna about the madness of Mother Yashoda in the following words. In madness, Mother Yashoda has addressed the Kadamba tree and inquired from them, "Where is my son?" Similarly, she had addressed the birds and the drones and inquired from them whether Krishna has passed before them. And she had inquired and she has inquired if they can say anything about you. In this way, Mother Yashoda, an illusion, was asking everybody about you, and she has been wandering all over Vrindavan. This is madness and separation from Krishna. When Nanda Maharaj was accused by Mother Yashoda of being hard-hearted, and he replied, "My dear Yashoda, why are you becoming so agitated? Kindly look more careful. Just see your son Krishna standing before you. Don't become a mad woman like this. Please keep my home peaceful." And Krishna was informed by some friend that his father Nanda was also in illusion in this way, in separation from Krishna. When all the wives of Vasudeva were present in the arena of Kamsa, they saw the most pleasing bodily features of Krishna, and immediately, out of parental affection, in the arena, milk began to flow from their breast, and the lower parts of their saris became wet. This symptom of ecstatic love is an example of the result of fulfillment of desire. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th chapter, verse 29, it is stated, when Krishna entered Dwaraka after finishing the battle of Kurukshetra, he first of all saw his mother and all his different stepmothers and offered his respectful obeisances unto their feet. The mothers immediately took Krishna upon their laps, and because of their parental affection, there was milk flowing out of their breast. So their breast milk mixed with the water of tears became the first offering to Krishna. This is one of the examples of being satisfied after great separation.
There is a similar statement in the Lalit Madhava. How wonderful is that Yashoda, the wife of King Nanda, out of her parental affection for Krishna, makes her tears and the milk from her breast and thus bathe her dear son Krishna. In Vigadamadava, a devotee addresses Lord Krishna as follows: My dear Mukunda, just after seeing your face, which was full with the scent of lotus flower, Mother Yashoda, being attracted by the moonlight of your face, became so overjoyed in her affection that immediately from her nipples of her water pot like breast, milk began to flow. She was thus constantly engaged in supplying milk to Krishna after wetting the covering cloth of the jug. These are some of the signs of parental love for Krishna by his mother, his father, his elderly persons. Symptoms of aesthetic love in parental affection are expressed when Krishna is accepted as the son. These constant transcendental emotions for Krishna are thus called steady ecstasy in parental love. Sri Rupa Goswami states herein that according to some learned scholars, the three kinds of transcendental mellow so far described, namely servitude, fraternity, and parental affection, are sometimes mixed. For example, the fraternal feelings of Balram are mixed with the servitude and parental affection. Similarly, King Yudhishthira's attraction for Krishna is also mixed with parental affection and servitude. Similarly, the transcendental mellow of Ugrasena, Krishna's grandfather, is mixed with servitude and parental affection. Um, the affection of all the elderly gopis in Vrindavan is the mixture of parental love, servitude, and fraternity. The affection of the sons of Madri, Nakula, and Sahadev, as as well as the affection of the sage Narad Muni, is a mixture of friendship and servitude. The affection of Lord Shiva, Garuda, and Uddhava is a mixture of servitude and fraternity.
हाँ ये छोटा चैप्टर है, ठीक है, हम ये वाला चैप्टर खत्म करके एंड कर देंगे. चैप्टर 44 ठीक है, chapter 44, devotional service and conjugal love. A pure devotee's attraction to Krishna and conjugal love is called devotional service and conjugal love. Although such conjugal feelings are not at all material, there is some similarity between this spiritual love and material activities. Therefore, persons who are interested only in material activities are unable to understand this spiritual conjugal love, and these devotional reciprocations appear very mysterious to them. Rupa Goswami therefore describes conjugal love very briefly. The impetuses of conjugal love are Krishna and his very dear consorts, such as Radharani and her immediate associates. Lord Krishna has no rival, no one is equal to him, and no one is greater than him. His beauty is always without any rival, and because he excels all others in the pastimes of conjugal love, he is the original object of all conjugal love. In the Gita Govinda by Jayadev Goswami, when Gopi tells her friend, Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure within this universe. His body is as soft as the lotus flower, and his behavior with the gopis, which appears exactly like the young boy's attraction to a young girl, is a subject matter of transcendental conjugal love. A pure devotee follows in the footsteps of the gopis and worships the gopis as follows. Let me offer my respectful obeisances to all the young cowherd girls whose bodily features are so attractive. Simply by their beautiful, attractive features, they are worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. And out of all the young gopis, Srimati Radharani is the most prominent.
The beauty of Srimati Radharani is described as follows. Her eyes defeat the attractive feature of the eyes of the chakori bird. When one sees the face of Srimati Radharani, he immediately hates the beauty of the moon. Her bodily complexion defeats the beauty of gold. Thus, let us all look upon the transcendental beauty of Srimati Radharani. Krishna's attraction for Radharani is described by Krishna himself thus: when I create some joking phrases in order to enjoy the beauty of Srimati Radharani, Radharani hears these joking words with great affection, great attention, but by her bodily features and count words she neglects me, and I even possess unlimited pleasure by her neglect of me, for she becomes so beautiful that she increases my pleasure 100 times. A similar statement can be found in the Geet Govinda, wherein it is said that when the enemy of Kamsa, Shri Krishna, embraces Srimati Radharani, he immediately becomes entangled in a loving condition and gives up the company of all other gopis. In the Padyavali of Rupa Goswami, it is stated that when the gopis hear the sound of Krishna's flute, they immediately forget all reviews offered by the elderly members of their families. They forget their defamation and their harsh behavior of their husbands. They only thought is to go out in search of Krishna. When the gopis met Krishna, the display of their exchanging glances as well as their jokings and laughing behavior is called anubhava, or sub ecstasy in conjugal love. In the Lalit Madhava, Rup Goswami explains that the movement of Krishna's eyebrows are just like Yamuna, and that the smiling that the smiling of Srimati Radharani is just like the moonshine. When the Yamuna and the moonshine come in the contact of the bank of the river, the water tastes just like nectar, and drinking it gives great satisfaction. It is as cooling as piles of snow. Similarly, in the Padyavali, one constant companion of Radharani says, "My dear moon-faced Radharani, your whole body appears very content, yet there are signs of tears in your eyes. Your speech is faltering, and your chest is also having heaving. By all these signs, I can understand that you must have heard the blowing of Krishna's flute, and as a result of this, your heart is now melting."
In the same Padyavali, there is the following description, which is taken as a sign of frustration in conjugal love. Srimati Radharani said, "Dear Mr. Cupid, please do not excite me by throwing your arrows at my body. Dear Mr. Air, please do not arouse me within the fragrance of flowers. I am not bereft of Krishna's loving attitude. And so, under the circumstances, what is the use of my sustaining this useless body? There is no need for such a body by any living entity. This is a sign of frustration in ecstatic love for Krishna." Similarly, in the Danakeli Kaumudi, Srimati Radharani, pointing to Krishna, says, "This clever boy of forest has the beauty of bluish lotus flower, and he can attract all the young girls of the universe. And now, after giving me a taste of his transcendental body, he has enthused me, and it is more that I can tolerate. I am now feeling like a female elephant who has been enthused by a male elephant. This is an instance of jubilation in ecstatic love for with Krishna. The steady ecstasy of conjugal love is the original cause of bodily enjoyment. In the Padyavali, this original cause of union is described. Voice आ रही है मेरी?
No, Mataji, in between it was not audible.
कॉल आ रहा है किसी का. You may continue.
Okay, Mataji. Similarly, in the Danakeli Kaumudi, Srimati Radharani, pointing to Krishna, says, oh, sorry, not this. The steady ecstasy of conjugal love is the original cause of bodily enjoyment. In the Padyavali, this original cause of union is described when Srimati Radharani tells one of her constant companions, "My dear friend, who is this boy whose eyelids dancing constantly have increased the beauty of his face and attracted my desire for conjugal love. His ears are decorated with buds of ashok flowers, and he has dressed himself in yellow robes. By the sound of his flute, this boy has already made me an impatient." The conjugal love of Radha and Krishna is never disturbed by any personal consideration. The undisturbed nature of the conjugal love between Radha and Krishna is described as: just a little distance away from Krishna was Mother Yashoda, and Krishna was surrounded by all of his friends. In front of in front of eyes in front of his eyes was Chandravali, and at the same time, on a chunk of stone in front of the entrance to Vraja stood a demon known as Vrishtasur. But even in such circumstances, when Krishna saw Radharani standing just behind a bush of many creepers, immediately his beautiful eyebrows moved just like lightning toward her. Another instance is described as follows: on on one side of the courtyard, the dead body of Shankasura was lying, surrounded by many jackals. On another side were many learned brahmanas who were all self-controlled. They were offering the nice prayers which were as soothing as the cool breeze in the summer. In front of Krishna, Lord Baladeva was standing, causing a cooling effect. But even amid uh, of all these different circumstances of soothing and disturbing effects, the lotus flower of aesthetic conjugal love that Krishna felt for Radharani could not wither. This love of Krishna for Radharani is often compared to a blooming lotus. The only difference is that Krishna's love remains ever increasingly beautiful. Conjugal love is divided into two portions: Vipralambha or conjugal love in separation, and Samabhoga or conjugal love in direct contact. Vipralambha separation has three subdivisions known as Purva Rag or preliminary attraction, Mana or seeming anger, and Pravasa or separation by distance.
When the lover and the beloved have a distinct feeling of not meeting each other, that stage is called Purva Rag or preliminary attraction. In the Padyavali, Radharani told her companion, "My dear friend, I was just going to the bank of the Yamuna, and all of a sudden a very nice boy whose complexion is just like a dark blue cloud became visible in front of my eyes. He glanced over me in a way that I cannot describe. But since this has occurred, I'm sorry that I no longer engage my mind in the duties of my household affairs. This is an instance of preliminary attraction for Krishna." In Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto 53rd chapter verse 2, Krishna told the messenger Brahmana who came from Rukmani, "My dear Brahmana, just like Rukmani, I cannot sleep at night and my mind is always fixed on her. I know that her brother Rukmi is against me and that due to his persuasion, my marriage with her has been cancelled." This is another instance of preliminary attraction. As for man or anger is concerned, there is the following incident describing in Gita Govinda. When Srimati Radharani saw Krishna enjoying himself in the company of several other gopis, she became a little jealous because her special prestige was being deemed. Therefore, she immediately left the scene and took shelter in a nice flower bush where the black drones were humming. Then, hiding herself behind the creepers, she began to express her sorrow to one of her consorts. This is an instance of seeming disagreement. An example of pravas or being out of contact of because of living in a distinct place is given in Patyavali as follows. Since the auspicious day when Krishna left for Mathura, Srimati Radharani has been raising her head on one of her hands and pressing her hand on one of her hands and constantly shedding tears. Her face is always wet now, and therefore there is no chance of her sleeping even for a moment. When the face becomes wet, the sleeping tendency is immediately removed. So when Radharani was always weeping for Krishna because of his separation, there was no chance of her getting any sleep for herself. In this Prahlad Samhita, Uddhava says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, panic stricken due to being pierced by the arrows of Cupid, is always thinking of you, the gopis, and he is not even accepting his regular lunch, nor is he getting any proper rest. When the lover and beloved come together and enjoy one another by direct contact. This stage is called Sambhog. There is a statement in Padyavali as follows: Krishna embraced Srimati Radharani in such an expert manner that he appeared to be celebrating the dancing ceremony of the peacocks. So Rupa Goswami thus ends the fifth wave of his ocean of nectar of devotion. He offers his respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appeared as Gopal, the eternal form of the Lord. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta summary study of the third division of Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu in the matter of five primary relationship with Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Okay, thank you so much, Madhiji.